Hello and welcome to Stress Less with me, Jess. Today, my special guest is Avil Beckford. Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have you on here. Reading is probably one of my favorite things to do in my pastime. And so I'm super excited to tell everybody who you are because I think you really solve a problem for others that maybe are not so much like me that are just super excited to dust off a book and say, let's read it. But maybe more have the mindset of it. So let's tell everybody why you're amazing. Okay. So you are the founder of the Visible Mentor, the Art of Learning Leadership Academy, the one problem focus podcast. She is also an expert interviewer, skilled writer, blogger, and publisher author. Her journey is to developing effective reading strategies involved out of grieving process. As part of her healing, she created a challenge for herself to read the world. I love that. While reading many of the nonfiction books during her reading challenge, she experienced deja vu. Haven't I read this before? Haven't I seen this before? She thought there had to be a better way. Through research, she discovered that most accomplished people engage in leadership reading. Based on what she discovered, she created the training program, which has morphed into what is today. She teaches professionals art of leadership reading so they can easily incorporate reading into a busy schedule. Instead of reading a nonfiction book cover to cover, they can learn the art of reading to why they need to learn what they let's do that one more time. The learning of the art reading to learn what they need to know. Wow. So amazing. I'm just so excited to have you on there. I think you just really hit home on what a lot of people do. I think one, in your story, like you said, you fell into love of reading through your grieving process. And I think a lot of us have that. We have something that when we're going through our life struggle, when we're rediscovering ourselves, we find that one thing that starts to be there for us. So whether it's reading, whether it's a TV show, whether it's exercising, creating this new hobby, we have that. And I think it's so great that you found a healthy one because I don't think we all have that privilege or understanding or awareness of finding a healthy outcome. So I want to say awesome to that. And I think it's just so cool that you decided to say, wait, all these successful people love reading, but it's really hard to find in your busy schedule. So how the heck do we even do it? So in your own words, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, before I start, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me and I appreciate it. So for me, there are three things that I do. One of them is not for money. It's just my way of giving back. So I have a podcast called The One Problem. It's a platform for women. They come on, they present a problem, and they have 6 minutes to provide a solution. It's micro learning and it's best. It's a way for us to learn from each other. So when I talk about the things that I do, people may think that I'm doing so much, but what many don't realize that there's a thread going through all of it which connects them. That is learning. So I do the leadership reading. And as you said, I read the world because, something happened in my life and I needed to deal with it. So essentially with leadership reading, I teach business owners and senior level executives how to read in such a way to shave hours of their reading time. So instead of taking up a book and reading it sequentially, cover to cover, you read it strategically. So you're reading to learn what you need to know at that moment in time. You may be looking for an answer to questions, solutions to a problem. You get the book, and I teach you how to navigate it. So we have all heard about the 80-20 rule. So essentially, this applies to reading nonfiction books. So you can read 20% of the text and understand 80% of it. The trick is to figure out which 20% to read, and I show you that. So the third thing I do is that I have a membership site called the Art of Learning Leadership Academy, and I offer what's called Bookish Notes. So think of Bookish Notes as a book summary on steroids. So, and I also have a section called Avil's Muses. So in that section, I pull everything together and you get my wisdom, like a lifetime of reading tied into whatever we're doing. So what makes this unique is that a lot of people who summarize books, they summarize best-selling books. I always say, because a book is a bestseller doesn't mean it's any good. It could be, but it could be a bestseller because of the name of the author and the engine that the publisher, the promotion engine the publisher puts in. So there are tons of really good books that are off the beaten path. And for some reason, they did not get the attention they deserve. So on the Art of Leadership Academy, yes, there are some best-selling books, but there are also a ton of books off the beaten path. So you'll get what I call hidden wisdom, because most people don't have access to that because they're not, reading those kinds of books. So what makes me a little bit different is that based on a theme, I curate these bookish notes. So just say, for example, you wanted to get up to speed on time management. There's a course with at least 10 bookish notes. So there are 10 different authors. So by the time you navigate your way through those 10, you're going to have multiple perspectives, diverse points of view, and more than likely, each author is going to come at time management from a different angle. So by the time you finish it, you have a solid foundation on time management that you can build on.
Wow. When you said, well, first of all, congrats on everything you're doing. You're doing so many different things, but I think they all like really tie in a nice bow. So congrats on that. That's super awesome. But the one thing that you mentioned too with the books is that just because they're on a bestseller doesn't mean they're great. And for me, coming out of the restaurant industry, when I was going through college, that was something we were taught about a lot of the liquors or the wine, just because they were like the most expensive and they had this brand name didn't mean that it's the best. And I think that's within any industry, cars, technology, just because it has this brand name and it costs so much money doesn't always mean it's the best. So it's that research that's going behind it saying, hey, there are some really great ones on the best-selling list for sure. There's no doubt about that. There's some really great authors, but just like everybody else, we have good things and we have bad things that we put out. There's good content that I put out, and there's some that's like, well, that was all right, Jess. That was a great blog, but this one's a better blog, right? Just like an author. So you have taken that time, and speaking of time management and knowing that we're all busy, you personally have taken that time going, this is great advice. This piece from this book, and it also correlates with this piece, or it piggybacks on this piece. And it just kind of like you're saying, there's so many books. And I think also what I'm hearing from your bookish part is that when you break these down, you're kind of introducing us to new authors because they're not on the best-selling list, but they're also just people that need to be heard. But it's also kind of just going, but if you want more on this subject, these are great books. I think a lot of times we go down that rabbit hole of, let me just search time management book on Amazon. And all of a sudden you have 6 billion books in front of you. You're going, I don't even know. Some of them are workbooks. Some of them are just like to-do lists. Some of them are not even books, and so it's just like, I just want a book. I want to learn.
And you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. Like, coming to this and getting what you need, or getting a slice of different perspectives at a moment in time.
Yeah, in a moment of time. And I think what I'm also hearing too is that I might not be ready for the rest of this book. I think some books teach you in stages. If, when you start to grow, you get to this next step in your life. And when you read these books, and, there's books that I had to reread because just the first 2 chapters I was ready for. 6, 7, and 8, I couldn't even comprehend because I wasn't at that level in my life, right? Or I didn't have those tools, that resource, that mindset, whatever the case may be. So I think what you're doing too is really going, here is the nuggets. If you want more, great. But here's what you can take right now. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I love the analogy used from the restaurant when you're talking about the wine, because one of the things I say to people, and it's it's interesting, like people read books and they do nothing with it. And I say reading a book and not applying the idea is like spending all day in the kitchen preparing a 5-course meal and not eating it.
Mm.
So in the bookish notes, there's a section, one big action to take.
Oh, I love that. That is so true. There's so many of my clients that I work with that I'll ask them if they've read a certain book or a certain podcast. And yeah, of course. And that's one of my questions. What action step did you take from that? Because it's all for me, I'm asking in the sense of what did you like and did you not like? Because then we can kind of base off our next decision on that. But a lot of times we don't make moves from there. A lot of times, like, oh, that was really cool read. That makes sense, but we don't imply it. So I think with you, what you're saying too, with your analogy of I just created all this time, spent all this money, because time is also money, created this meal, no one's showing up for dinner and I'm not eating it. Right. So it's like, so
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's great. I'm super excited. So let's break this down a little bit. So you have the listener, they're writing the notes, they're saying, yes, I need Avil in my life. What is the best way for them to contact you?
I think probably the best way to contact me, they could go to my main website, theinvisiblementor.com. So there's that. If they're interested in art of learning, all the cool domain names are gone. So I had this long thing. So what I did, I also got this domain name. So think of the acronym. So you have Art of Learning Leadership Academy.
Okay.
So that's AOLA. AOLLA.info. AOLA.info. So yeah, so that. And of course, people can reach out to connect with me on LinkedIn. And that's an easy way to get a hold of me. But if you do so, just say I was listening to Jess' podcast to give me some context.
For sure. Sometimes, yeah, just let me know what kind of conversation I'm about to start,
Mm-hmm.
No, that's great. No, I appreciate that. So my next question for you, it's going to be more related to the stress factor. How do you feel you manage the stress with your work and your everyday to life?
You're going to love this one.
Oh, tell me.
If I'm feeling stressed, I grab a book to read, preferably one that makes me laugh.
Ooh.
And the thing about, like, I'm an active reader. Like, say I'm reading fiction. Oh, I'm right at insert myself into that scene.
Yes.
Sometimes I get so upset when a character is not behaving the way I toss the book. And I have to calm down. So I'm a very active reader. I get into the story. And even nonfiction. So I was working on a project. Well, the project I told you about with the bookish notes. And I had to summarize is today's a science fiction, tomorrow's science fact. And it was so interesting because I read it. It had lots of good information. And I'm sure you've experienced this. You read a book, it's really good, and the author gave you no call to action, and you're sitting down. So what do I do with this now? So that's how I was feeling. So it took a lot more energy and time and focus. But I did some research and came up with what action the reader could take.
I love that.
Because I don't like when I'm left hanging. I want to do something about it.
I think that says so much about who you are. Because I think whether you're reading nonfiction or a fiction book, I think there are cliffhangers. Even when I'm reading like a romantic novel, I'm like, so what happened? Did they fall back in love? Just tell me. Where's my where's the next piece? It's you get so frustrated. So I love that I'm not the only person that walks around after I read a book going, well, what the heck?
Definitely, you're not alone.
You feel good. There's more of me out there. No, that's so good. And as a reader, not that I despise movies or TV shows, but just because you're a reader to a reader, and I know how enthusiastic you are about reading. What do you feel is the difference? What do you feel you get more relaxed from reading or de-stressing from reading than when you would, why do you go gravitate more towards a book than, you know, maybe towards a TV show or a movie?
I guess because I grew up, okay, first of all, I grew up in Jamaica. And for the longest time, there was just one TV channel. So everybody watched the same thing.
Yeah.
So of course, sometimes you get bored because they're showing something you have no interest in. So I would read. So reading has always been a part of me. So because there's so many different types of books, that's something I gravitate. And I think I've evolved and changed. Like, for instance, I have Amazon Prime and I'll start watching a book, watching a film, and I lose interest because nothing in it grabs me. It doesn't stimulate me intellectually. And so, you know, evil films that were rated pretty high, I started watching them, and maybe in 15 minutes, I drop it because it's just not grabbing me. And I go read a book. You know, there are some authors that I like, you know, just mindless reading, put you into a good space. And I'd rather do that than watching stuff. But I must say, though, I was reading so much, my head felt like it was going to explode. So I wanted to, no, seriously. And I thought I have to find something. So I saw The Mentalist. Never watched when it was on. And in no time, I watched all the seasons, all the episodes. And the reason why it grabbed me was because of, I like the way his mind worked. I like the way he did things. And I thought that it would be good for people to develop some of the good skills of a mentalist. Because he was very good at paying attention to body language.
Yes.
So imagine being in a meeting, right? And what people are saying do not align with their body language. They're telling yes, 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 but their body's saying no, no, no.
Yeah.
And just, you know, I picked out a bunch of books because I want to create a course, you know, of Bookish Notes on mentalism. So it would be, you know, hot reading, cold reading. He always talks about the Member Palace and review those kinds of books. So that got my attention because yeah.
What I think is cool, what you mentioned was, and I bring this up. So a lot of times when people go, it's a healthy habit, like reading is a healthy habit, right? It's probably more beneficial than watching TV and things like that. But even if you overdo a healthy habit, you can overdo it. You can overdo it. So I love that you brought that up because it's a real thing. You know, it's not that you're better or anything like that, but even a healthy habit can be overdone. So yeah, there's different breaks for you, and find a show that actually still grabbed your attention with something. So I think it's cool. But then also, I think there's a couple of things come from this: taking a break, stepping back, you know, vegging out, whatever the case may be. You got to become more creative in a different way in your business. So I think
exactly,
you know, there's some cool things about that. So I love that. Before we get into the lightning round, what is the one thing you want our listeners to take away from today's episode?
Okay, so this is based on stuff that has always happened, but it came up recently.
Okay.
Okay, so people, professionals start reading a book and they're not enjoying the experience, but they stick with the bad book because they're thinking, okay, the author spent a lot of time writing this book. I should read it. I have a message for you. Get over that. There are tons of good books in the world. If you're reading something that's bad, let it go. Pick up another book. Don't waste your time. And even if the book is good, always think about, why are you reading that book? What is your purpose? And read the sections of the book that align with your purpose. That's the message I have.
Oh, and I love you speaking of body language, the way you just said that whole statement. If you aren't watching and you're only listening, there was a very much of assertiveness that took over your body. Like, listen, this is what you're gonna do. So cool. You see what we were talking about. But you know what? I catch myself doing that. I catch myself going, I invested in this book, whether, you know, keeping from a library book, and I'm still like, well, I bought the book, so now I have to use it. And like you said, the author spent so much time, especially when it's a best-selling book and I'm forcing myself to read it. And I think it's kind of going to your second piece. Is it aligned with you? Is it aligned with what you need today? Right. So
Exactly.
so great. That's so good.
And speaking on what you just said, let me quickly tell you this.
You're good.
I paid $20 US because I'm Canadian, so that's going to be like $25 Canadian for this ebook. And everything I needed was in the conclusion. I read that and I was so guilty because I spent 25 Canadian dollars to buy this book.
Yeah.
And when I paused, I said, get over it. You got exactly what you needed. It doesn't matter how much you paid for it.
Yeah.
The author gave you what you need in that one chapter. You got what you need. That's the end of that.
You got what you needed. This is a good point. I like that. I like that. All right, let's get right into the lightning round. Let's do it. What is your favorite day of the week?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Oh, okay. Okay. What is your favorite breakfast?
Bacon and eggs.
Yes. What is your favorite store?
I love this store called, oh God, what's the name? Carrier. Femme Carrier.
Is your bed made right now?
Yeah.
What never fails to make you laugh?
Just silly things. Silly things.
Silly things. Are you a morning or a night person?
That's tricky because I do get up early, but I don't want to talk to anybody because it takes me a while to get into my own. So I don't know if that's a good answer.
No, it's a great answer. It's realistic. Oh my goodness. I'm so grateful that you came on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.